Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Hey, you know what? This one's a little bit more serious today, but have you ever wondered how you heal from sexual trauma? This is your show. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I am Ryan Morris. As always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith. And if you haven't subscribed on our Facebook channel, this is a great opportunity to go do that right now. And then also, you could go to a Tribe of Giants on Facebook and join our community because we have an amazing community of Giants. They're the best ever. Just a little biased, but just the best. And
they really are.
Yeah, they really are. So, and some of them are starting to watch. So we're excited that they're here with us. And we've got an absolute amazing guest. I've been following his journey for a while, and the things that he declares and states, it's amazing because they come true, and he puts things out to the universe and pushes through and doesn't know exactly how they're going to happen. And I'm excited for you to be able to get to meet him. And so I'm going to have Nicholas T. Smith introduce our amazing guest today.
Yeah, we got Perry Power all the way from the UK. He's an actor, he's a writer, he's a mentor, and he's a sexual abuse survivor. So he does everything he can to make a positive change in the world through storytelling. And he's ranked pretty high. If you look him up on TikTok, he's got 125,000 followers and over 2.3 million likes on his content because he has a message of helping sex abuse survivors break their silence. And that speaks to the hearts of a lot of people around the world. So he co-runs a charity called We Rescue Kids. And that's where they rescue kids from sexual abuse and give them support that they need to heal and then positively move forward in their lives. So his latest book, Breaking the Silence, reached #1 on Amazon. And he has been seen on Fox, NBC, CBS, MTV, Sky, and the Good Men Project. Man, that sounds like you've done
TED Talk, right? TED Talk, movie. What else? What else is coming?
I don't know. Where do I stop, guys?
It's a tsunami of amazingness.
Well, welcome to the show.
No, thank you, guys. Thank you. I just want to say your intro video, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's literally like I'm in a TV show. I know that's what you're trying to put forward, but you're doing a cracking job of it. I absolutely love it.
We try to crack things, We're cracking at everything.
There we go. There we go. I'm on my own TV show with you guys. So this is amazing. But yeah, thank you for having me on. And in regards to your Facebook group as well, I'm relatively new. I think it's been maybe, I don't know, 2 months now, maybe. I've been in there, and it's a great vibe, and it's one of my favorite groups. I regularly check in there, and I love what you guys are doing with it.
Yeah, thank you for being a part. Yeah. Ryan, do you want to lead us off with the questions? Maybe we'll turn it over to you today.
Well, take us back because I want our goal here is to help our viewers to be able to see your Giants journey. Like where did Perry Power come from? Where did you I know you were a baby at one point in time, but as you grow up, we want to go way back and start discovering your journey. So take us back to childhood a little bit, and how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What was your household like? Challenges, things like that. Start us on a chronological order here, and then we'll kick in and dive deep.
Good old timeline.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. So I from London in the UK. I was born in West London. When I was 4 years old, my mum, so my biological mother, she walked out. And that was probably my earliest memory. My earliest memory actually was there's two of them, right? And I think they're quite close together. I remember sitting in the hallway of the first sort of flat that we had. And I was sitting in the hallway and I was playing with cars. And my dad just shouted at me, just had a go at me for something. I don't know what it was. But he was just having a go at me. And then he walks into the kitchen. I remember my mum just sort of kneeling down and playing the good cop. The good cop, bad cop. She's playing the good cop. And my second memory was my dad in the hallway. I was in the bathtub, and he was saying to me that your mom's just left. She just walked out. And I remember being like, where's she gone? Where's she gone to the shops? She coming back? And he's like, and he obviously tried to explain it to me in a certain way, but I don't think I understood at that age. And a couple of years went by, and I'll see my mom maybe once a year, max twice a year for a good number of years. And then my dad met somebody else. He met who is now my stepmom. They got married. She's South African, so I got like half of my family, stepside are all South African, and they got married over in SA. I was the best man. A 9-year-old child was the best man running the show, and so that was amazing. And then probably about the age of 10. So my dad at the time, his mum and his stepdad, which would be my step-granddad, they lived about 15 minutes away from our house where we was growing up. And I was very close with my nan. So I would go around there quite frequently. And I would very, very, very rarely go around there on my own. It would either just be me, or it'd be me and my cousin, it'd be me and my auntie, it'd be me and my dad, or me and my stepmom. And I had an interesting relationship with my step-granddad, because at the time he was just my step-granddad. He would take me down to the pub. He would get me a Diet Coke whilst he's drinking his ale. We'd play pool together, and now we would class it as grooming, right? What he was doing to me, he was grooming me in a certain way to see where my barriers were, where I was uncomfortable, where I was comfortable, what can he get away with, where it wouldn't ring alarm bells and me go and tell my family, right? And from so many years of talking to survivors of abuse and people who have abused, it's a common thing. Abusers who do it consistently are actually, they're smart people in their own rights in regards to they don't do the same thing to everyone, because not everybody will react in a certain way. So they need to mold and be like a chameleon with their abusee, right, to see what they can get away with. So with me, he would position himself as being like the god in my world, right? And he would abuse me sexually, sometimes when there's people in the room, sometimes when there wasn't people in the room. And that can often surprise people. Like, what do you mean people? Do they not know? Like,
it's like plain sight. You would think that, Exactly. And how it stopped is what was a consistent thing with other people in the room. So this happened when I was about 11 and a half. Now, it was a common thing when the TV was on, I would sit on my granddad's lap. I would just sit on his lap and watching TV, right? And there was one time where I was sitting on his lap. My stepmom was in the living room too, watching TV. Now, he used to smoke roll-up cigarettes all the time, right? And when I was on his lap, there was this one time where he had his arm over the arm of the sofa, and a cigarette dropped out of his hand, went onto the carpet. So my mum, just out of the corner of her eye, she notices it. It's nothing to watch because it's an accident. But then he's not leaning over to pick up the cigarette. So she looks at the cigarette and he's burning a hole in the carpet. And now she's like, well, why is he not leaning over? And then when she looks up, as clear as day, his hand was down my pants, massaging me and, doing business. And she was like, what? Like, because it wasn't like it was positioned where nobody can see. It was directly like me and you right now on camera. This is literally how it was, right? And I think, how like sometimes people might have sex in public because of the thrill of being caught. I think there was an element of that with him, right? Wow. The thrill, right? And my stepmom then sort of jumped up, went out of the room, called me out, and then took me home because it was just her. My dad wasn't there. So, and then she took me home, and then she was darting around the house like, do I tell Andy, my dad? Do I tell him? Do I tell him? Do I not tell him? Do I tell him? Do I not tell him? Wow. Because they were just like maybe a couple of years into the marriage. Like she hadn't made a stake as being like a mum to me, like do you know what I mean? So she was like, I don't know if I should tell him or not. Am I in a position to? She did. And my dad's reaction, which is interesting, was to have a go at me. He's like, are you kidding me? And then he went to go and have a go at me, right? And then my mum was like, well, no. Like, don't have a go at him. It's not his fault. Like, are you understanding what I'm telling you right here? And then I vaguely remember this conversation where my dad said to me, he asked me about what happened. And I told him about that particular instance. And then he then said to me, right, you're not going around there again. You're not going around to your nan's house again, right? You're not allowed around there. It's out of bounds. And I remember, and here's the thing, because we're talking 10 years old. I'm 26 now, 16 years ago. Sexual abuse wasn't a thing on the TV. Sexual abuse wasn't in the newspapers. People wouldn't talk about it over a cup of coffee, right? It just wasn't talked about. It's still kind of taboo now, right? We're doing a very good job with shining a light on it as the days go on, but it's still quite taboo in some, especially intrafamilial abuse. When it's within a family, it's very taboo, which we'll get onto a bit later.
But I still didn't understand what was it wrong. I didn't get it, right? So when my dad said you're not allowed to go around there, I remember being pissed at my dad because I wasn't allowed to go around there again. Now all of a sudden my dad was the villain in my story, right? Because he was stopping me from going around there. So then he said to me, right, Perry, don't tell anybody about this, right? Don't go to school and tell your friends. Don't tell teachers. Don't tell other family members. Just keep it within the four walls of this house. So I was like, okay. Again, didn't see a problem with it. Then I went throughout school life, and I think beneath the surface, it was bubbling, right? It was bubbling because then subconsciously things would be on the news, but it'll still be subconscious. I'll pick it up until it got to a point where it was actually. So I said I was from London. Then my nan passed away. So my step-granddad died 2 years after being caught. Then my nan passed away 2 or 3 years after that. And then my dad done up the house, sold the house. Now from the money from the house, my dad was like, right, let's move out of London so we can get a better place for the money. So we moved to a place called Berkshire. Now I remember we was in the car, right, going to Berkshire. And I remember I was like, nobody knows me here, right? Nobody knows me in Bracknell. Nobody knows me in this college because I was going to join the college, this new college, halfway through a course. I did my first half of the course at the college I was in London, second half in this new college. And because in London, I was a virgin at the age of 16. I didn't have many friends. I wasn't confident. I wasn't the life of the party. Now, that's fine for some people, but I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be like the jock, which is insecurities, right? It's all ego, right? But at the time, I wanted to be the jock. I wanted to be the popular guy. And I was like, well, when I go to Bracknell, I'm going to be that guy. So I created a character, right? I created Perry Power 2.0. This guy had slept with loads of girls. He's got so many friends. He's the life of the party. He doesn't care about anything. If he doesn't want to do it, he ain't going to do it. If he wants to do it, he's doing it. So when I went to this college, I was that guy. Then when I remember like in the class, the girl was like, so Perry, how many girls have you slept with? At the time, it was 0. I was like, 16, 17, you know? And then they're like, oh my God. And I was like, Perry, you need to carry on with this character because you don't want to be the Perry who was in London. And then I faked it till I made it. All the things became true. And then this is where things started to turn, right? Because I lived with that character that I created for about 4 years. I went traveling, came back. Then I moved into a place with my girlfriend at the time. And Lewis Howes brings out a book, Masking Masculinity, right? And I see him on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And he's talking about the alpha male mask. And he's talking about all these different masks that he's wearing. And that made me realize that it wasn't necessarily a character that I was creating. It was multiple masks that I was forming to hide this identity that I no longer wanted to face. And as a matter of fact, I needed to rip those masks off and face that identity. And then that is kind of where not only did it become to my awareness how much impact and how many wounds I had that were still open from the abuse, but also that's where the healing journey started.
Wow.
That's where I'm at. I'm just jaw dropped right now. And so this mask that you put on, that makes a lot of sense, you know, that you would do something to shift out of that old life. To me, it does anyway. And so how did that feel for you? Did it feel fulfilling? Did it feel like it just opened the door for the healing? I mean, can you go into that a little bit?
Sure. So I think it definitely opened the door, because if I have to now backstep about 5 months prior to that book release, so if I go back to my dad, right? Me and my dad is an amazing person. He definitely, my dad was the definition of a man's man, right? He was a man's man. He doesn't show emotions whatsoever. And because my dad was from Cockney, London. He's a geezer, right? And geezers, they don't show emotions, otherwise they're not a man anymore. And that was my dad. And he tried his best to bring me up to be a man. I remember this one time when I got mugged in a park, and I must have been maybe 13 or 14. And I got mugged in a park, and this guy took my money, he took my phone. And his phone was a brand new flip Motorola phone that my nan saved up loads of money to buy me for my birthday. So I go home crying, saying I just got mugged. And instead of my dad comforting me, but it's okay, son, right? He turned his rings around, took the baseball bat, said, follow me. And he walked to the park, and there was a group of about 10 to 15 teenagers. And I said he was with them. And he just walked over to these 10 to 15 teenagers, right? And he lifted up the baseball bat, said, where is this guy who just mugged my son? And he wasn't there. And they said, oh, we don't know where he is. He's gone somewhere, blah, 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 blah. We then get home, and my dad says to me, he goes, right, you never, ever let somebody disrespect you like that again, right? And I remember that. And you can have loads of people like, how dare you? But, you know, that was just his way of parenting. And so me growing up, I needed to be a man. I don't want to disappoint my dad. I don't want to be crying all the time. I don't want to be crying at chick flicks and Britain's Got Talent, Golden Buzzer and stuff. I mean, I do now. I'm a mess now, right? But
I do too. The Golden Buzzer, and I'm like, bah!
hey, I'm dead. I'm gone, right? And I didn't like. I was like, I need to be that guy, right? I need to be that man. And then from about 2014, my dad started to drink more. Like he drunk, but then he started to drink more, and it like more where it's like, okay, where he would drink, he would move from weekend drinking to weekday drinking, then drinking at home to then drinking in the car, right? And I would then fill up his vodka bottles with water, so my mum wouldn't find out in the house. She would just assume that it was vodka in a bottle, right? But I didn't feel like I couldn't, because if my dad was like, "Can you fill up the vodka bottle with water?" If I said no, what do you mean no? You don't tell me no. You're going to do it. You're my son, right? So it's like, all right, fine, right? But then the drinking started to escalate, and then he became a raging alcoholic. I called it like, an invisible alcoholic, whatever you want to call it, because you wouldn't know he's drunk. He was a better actor than me. Like, he should have taken over as a profession, right? Like, you would not tell that he was drunk. But I could only tell because one eye was slowly squint, and that's how I knew that he'd been drinking. And then from the drinking, his blood pressure went through the roof. So then he was on blood pressure tablets. And then from there, January 2017, he became a diabetic. Then 4 months later, he had a heart attack and died just out of nowhere, right? And I remember my brother calling me, right? Well, he actually sent me 2 pictures. One was an ambulance van outside, because I moved out of home when I was 19, because the way that my dad raised me, he needed to cotton wool me, because my dad, growing up, his mum and his stepdad, the StepGrandad, the abuser, they were alcoholics. So my dad would cook all of their meals, and they didn't care that my dad didn't exist, or if he did exist, right? So he lacked that love growing up. So he wanted to give me the love that he lacked, and that was to suffocate me, right? Growing up, right? He confined me in this bubble. And so when I was 19, I was like, I'm out. I'm going to uni. I'm going traveling. I need to just shed, and I need to spread my wings and fly, learn my own mistakes, and not try to learn my own mistakes through my parents' advice, right? So I hadn't lived at home since the age of 19. But then my brother sends me 2 messages, the ambulance van. The second one was a picture of my dad lying on the bed, and there's a paramedic standing next to him. So I called him up. I'm like, "What's going on, Travis?" And then my mum took the phone off him, goes, "Don't worry, Perry, he shouldn't have sent you those messages." Goes, "Because there's nothing to worry about. His blood levels are just off, right? So the paramedics need to take him down to the hospital to even him back out again." My dad's cracking jokes in the background, is all good. Then they called me an hour later to say that he had a heart attack in the back of the ambulance van. He didn't make it to the hospital, and he's 48 years old. 48. Young, right? And he was my best mate, like, and I was one of his only mates too. And it was I don't know, it's a very interesting experience to say the least. But I remember for a considerable amount of months after that, just grieving, of course, and going through denial and going through hatred towards my dad. How dare you become an alcoholic? Being an alcoholic is a choice, you selfish arsehole, like, and all these things I would just say, because you're leaving behind a family. And then I got through that, right? Because they're just natural, right? If anybody's been through loss, it's natural. And when I got through the other side, I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, hold on a second. Alcoholism is a coping mechanism, right? Drug addiction is a coping mechanism. Nobody's born an alcoholic. Nobody's born a racist. Nobody's born and wanting to molest kids. It happens from wounds that haven't been healed yet. It happens from conditioning. It happens from X, Y, and Z. I was like, okay, so my dad became an alcoholic for a reason, but why? And I didn't know the reason. And it made me realize, and I don't know what, but it sent like a trigger in my mind that if I carry on down the same road, I'm going to end up like my dad, right? And I remember I was brushing my teeth. I spit my toothpaste out the sink, looked up, and it must have been about 4 or 5 months after my dad's passing. And that was exactly what went through my head. And then a couple of months after that, the book came out. So it was like divine timing, how all these things slowly started, a domino effect, right? And then the book came out. And then I'm the sort of person, if I realize something, I need to act on it then. I can't sit on it for a couple of weeks. Like, how am I going to take this mask off for? I was like, no. When my girlfriend comes home, I'm going to tell her about the masks. I'm going to tell her about the abuse. And I was shit scared. Like, I legit was. Because it's the thing, right? When you live in a silence, you feel like you're the only one who's gone through it, right? Because like you feel like you're the only one who's gone through it, and you feel like people are going to outcast me. People are going to think that I deserved it. People are going to think that I'm silly, that I'm seeking attention. So I had a feeling I might have got some of those responses from my girlfriend. But then when I told her, she just literally welcomed me with open arms and gave me a reaction that I never would have thought I would have gotten. And then from her, I then told 4 people at a business mastermind. Then from there, I then put it up on, did a video, and I put it up on Facebook. And then that is what got me to where I'm today. That video on Facebook is literally what snowballed everything.
I want to point out some of the things that I'm seeing in this as you're talking about the experience, right? You're going through this trauma, this abuse as a kid, 10, 11 years old. So there's all this conflict, and it goes back even further. You know, your mom leaves, and then you have a stepmom, and then you have somebody, a step grandpa that you hope that you can trust, that violates that trust. And then you have all the emotions of that get buried. Your dad it feels like more of a stoic, like, don't show your emotions, be a man's man. And so you're learning, don't show these emotions. And I would imagine that in your dad, the alcoholism is stemming from just putting on that mask, right? Like you were talking about, where he's trying to put on this facade and be the tough guy, but inside he's burning up. And so he's drinking, right? And then here you are with the same conflict, looking in the mirror, brushing your teeth, the same conflict. And you're experiencing all this turmoil of, I've got to get this out of me. And you want to share that emotion, and it redefines masculinity by doing that. Because as men, we're taught, you don't share your weakness, you don't cry, you tough up, you go out there and you fight the guy that took your phone, right? And here you are with all of these struggles that have been building up over years, with a conflict of don't tell anybody. And then all of a sudden you do. Am I seeing it?
Yeah, you are seeing it. And just to add on to that, to add more weight to that, is an example, right? The second to last time before I saw my dad, is funny. The last time I saw my dad, I popped round there for lunch, and he was completely drunk out of his mind. He'd been sleeping all day, and he was downstairs. And now it's not the greatest of memories for the last one of him, but the time before that, he came round to my house again, drunk. I said he's just had an argument with my mum at home. I said, okay, what was the argument about? And he goes, she just whatever, like blaming her, right? Not taking any responsibility, right? Wow. Zero responsibility, is always someone else's fault. Blaming her for something. And then he leaves. And I remember for the first time, I was just like fed up. I was like, what is going on, Dad? Right? So all I did was I just messaged him and I said, Dad, why on earth are you drinking so much? And he literally just sends me one reply, and he literally just said to fight away the demons. Now I remember at the time when he said to fight away the demons, I was like, what demons? What on earth are you talking about? What demons are you talking about, Dad? And I just thought that was him just again trying to, because when he started to become an alcoholic and started to drink more, he became a bit of like he seeked attention a lot. He seeked approval a lot. Before, whether that was then, he just masked it and just numbed it. But when he became an alcoholic, that really came out. Then he really became emotional. He would cry everything. But it was like, it went like from complete left to complete right. Right?
Yeah. Wow.
And I remember after my dad passing, I remember I was around the family home, and it was like the time where we was all sitting in a circle questioning what on earth has just happened. Why is your dad just dropped dead out of nowhere? Like, what has been going on? And I remember saying to my mom, I was like, well, he was an alcoholic. And she looked at me, she's like, what do you mean he's an alcoholic? I'm like, Mom, he's been drinking like constantly for years. And I said, I used to fill up his vodka bottles with water. And I remember the look she gave. And I remember I talked about it like a lot later. And I remember the look that she gave me is like, what, you kept that a secret? Like, what do you mean? And I'm thinking, how did you not see that he was an alcoholic? But again, he was a good masker, right? Master of disguise. And I remember saying to my mum, I was like, well, Dad texted me saying that to fight away the demons. And then she again said, what demons is he talking about? But here's the thing, right? So when I done that video on Facebook, it took me literally, because I remember driving home from this mastermind. I was like, right, like the whole point of a mastermind, you hang around people who are 2, 5, 10, 100 steps ahead of you. They're opening your bubble. So your bubble is now bigger. Your comfort zone is bigger. Your world is bigger, right? And you're seeing all these things that you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
I'm driving home from the mastermind. I'm like, and I'm still like in this huge bubble that's been expanded. I'm like, I've just told 4 people that I had no idea who they were about the abuse, about my whole story. I was like, I got to do it again. I want to call up my mate. But I was like, no, I don't want to have to call up every Tom, Dick, and Harry and tell them what's going on. I want to be able to say it once and everybody knows. I was like, right, it's a video. I was like, okay, I'll do it when I get home. And then the voice in my head, no, Perry, if you do it when you get home, your bubble's going to shrink back down. You're going to go back in through your front door. Boom, you're in your comfort zone again. You'll talk yourself out of it because there's going to be a beautiful reason why you shouldn't do it, right? And I was like, okay. So I pulled left, parked my car. Literally, I forced my body into movement before my brain could even think anything more. And I took my phone, right? And I hit record. I had no idea what I was going to say. No idea. I was like, but my phone's recording. Now, it took me 7 takes because I cried in the first one. I was like, no, people can't see me cry because I think I'm a wimp, right? Then the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. It took me 7 takes. And when I got my video out there, I talked about the abuse. But here's the interesting thing, right? My whole family thought that the occasion when my stepmom caught the abuse happening, that was the only time I'd ever been abused by him. Because that's apparently what I told them. Well, I never led them to believe that it was a consistent thing, right? When my mom caught it. So when they watched the video, my whole family was like, what do you mean it was going on for a year and a half? Like how, where? And I'll tell them about all the time. I'll tell them about my step-granddad would push his erection up against me. He might stroke my face. He might breathe heavily into my ear. He might, grab me or push me up against the wall, or all these multiple things when people weren't looking, people weren't in the room. Hence why they didn't see it. And then I go around, right, to a family member's house. Now, at this point in time, there was one member in my family who I knew had also been abused by the same man. And that was my cousin, Kelly. Now, she's in my book, so I can say her name because she shared her story. And she was abused by him for a lot longer than I was, with worse things than what happened to me, okay? So I already knew about Kelly. And which also goes to show that sometimes with abusers, it's not gender specific. Doesn't matter what gender you are, right? And I remember going round to my auntie's house, and it says my auntie and my cousin, her daughter. And my auntie was like, oh, I watched your video. I said, okay, yeah. And she goes, I didn't know it happened for a year and a half. My cousin was livid. She goes, you should have told me. I was like, oh, come on, like, it doesn't matter. Past is in the past. We're in the present now. And my auntie's like, well, you weren't the only one who was abused by him. I said, yeah, I know, Kelly. She goes, it wasn't just you and Kelly. And I was like, who? She goes, me. And she goes, and your dad. And I was like, oh.
Wow.
I was like, oh. I was like,
yeah.
Dad was actually abused by him. She goes, yeah, for a number of years. And I was like, well, doesn't that make a lot of bloody sense? Doesn't a lot of dots connect now? Isn't there a reason why my dad told me to keep it a secret and not tell anybody when it happened to me? Because he was in guilt because he put his son in harm's way, right? He was living in guilt because it happening to me was resurfacing his own story. And the alcohol, it's just a lot of things. It's, you might think that you can live on this story. Oh, I got abused when I was younger. I got raped when I was younger by a family member. But it's okay. It's not going to affect me now. It might not affect you right now, or you might not think it's affecting you right now. But beneath the surface it is. And 15 years time, right, it's going to transpire into every area of your life. And alcohol and drugs or sex or work will be the addiction that you're going to have, right, to fill that void temporarily until it's too late. And then literally when I found out, that literally was that key information when I found out that my dad had been abused. One, to me, it was a sign from the universe that my dad died for a specific reason. And he died for me to get out there with this message, right? And that is how I utilized it. I'm going to cry now. It literally changed, right? From me grieving my dad's death to me being like, that was a blessing, right? Because if you're still alive, I wouldn't be here with this message. And you know why? Because he's quite a manipulative man. And he's quite an emotionally abusive man, and I'll feel scared for saying about this because my dad will be ringing my phone all day, every day, or he would turn up at my house knocking on the door, right? Saying, how dare you be speaking about this? Nobody wants to know. And he would have just belittled me. But he died for a specific reason for me to talk about this. And that is literally where I just went ham on who can I talk about this to, every single day. And
wow.
That is why everything's happening now, because I'm never going to give up this message.
You would have held back. You wouldn't have done what you did if your dad were still alive. There's no way you would have shared this story.
Absolutely not.
And what I'll say this cautiously and comfortably here. Hopefully you can hear me in this. What a blessing, right?
Yeah.
Really, because had he not passed, this message wouldn't be out. And to find out that discovery that your dad was abused and he's masking those demons and he's trying to teach you how to mask those demons.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
The way he knew how. and it wasn't working for him. I mean, he was just buying himself time. And here you are in releasing this story. I mean, I'm wondering, how does it feel for you? If we're talking about the feeling of this expression, like, how does that feel for you to be able to put that out there to the world?
It feels it's an interesting, you know, I don't know if this is going to answer the question, but to me it makes sense. Is that so when I left home, I came from a home where they were just working in jobs that they hated, right? And they were living paycheck to paycheck. So I was like, right, I'm not going to follow that suit. And that's entrepreneurship. And I'm an actor, but I was like, but I'm working in bars, trying to pay the bills while I was acting, and I'm unhappy, which is seeding over into the acting. And that's why a lot of actors quit the industry, because they're miserable, but they're not miserable from the acting. They're miserable because they can't pay the bills. And what they're doing to pay the bills is making them miserable, which then like cows their judgment, and they think it's the acting. I don't want it to happen to me. So I got into entrepreneurship, and I was constantly, I've been through this phase since the age of 19, right, of building businesses, and 99% of them went nowhere, right? Didn't work. And I was constantly chasing this, definitely need of approval, because my dad hardly ever said that he was proud of me. So I wanted to try and create something where he was proud of me, right? And then, but I was constantly chasing something for like a paycheck. Am I going to get onto this? Is going to help me grow my audience so I can get paid because I've got bills to pay, X, Y, and Z,
Yeah,
right?
wow. Yeah, the how to, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then when this message came into my world, as in like, Perry, here's the path, right? And I'm looking at the path, and I'm like, but there's no, like, you can argue this, and I don't mean it, but when I said like at the time, I was like, but there's no money in this path because it's a message. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a message I need to help. But then I was like, I don't care. But this is the thing, right? It's like how can I explain? Like the book, right? I don't make any money from the book. I don't give a fuck about the money from any. Sorry about my language. I get really passionate. I don't care.
I like your passion. Yeah, passion away.
I don't care about the money from money's just, it's gonna come. I don't care, right? Because when I get messages every day from people saying I've broken my silence, or Perry, I'm struggling in silence, and it's like the old versions of me, or it's the old versions of my dad, and I know that I'm helping them break their silence, and I'm being that person who helps people break their silence. I don't care about anything other than that result, right? So it's like, how do I feel since being able to pursue this message? Is like, it's freeing. When I was constantly chasing in entrepreneurship, trying to build businesses, I wasn't free. I didn't feel free because I constantly felt like I had to create a business. I had to create something for money, you know, because a lot of the reason why you're in entrepreneurship is for financial freedom, sorry. And it does hinder a lot of decisions that you need to make in entrepreneurship if you're trying to make the money. But then since being on this journey, I'm like, I'm just like, I don't know, guy. I don't know. It's just
I want to highlight it. I want to point it out because my goal is to highlight the path, right? Because people watching, they might have missed what you just gave, which is incredibly powerful for every creation. And it doesn't matter whether it's writing a book or telling your story about sexual trauma or being an artist. Like, there's so many ways to be a giant in this world. And what you're highlighting is one of the pathways that you took to become a giant. But the process for becoming a giant, this is where people miss it, is they want to know step by step how it's going to come about. And there's so much stress in that because we have to control every single step. And when it doesn't go our way, then we feel like we're failing. Like, we start to feel like I'm not doing it right. Or you start to compare. Why is it so easy for that person over there and not for me? And what I want to highlight in your journey is that you had this imagination, this thought as you're driving to make a video. And then as you're driving home, I'll do it at home. Like, you were going to do it your way. And it said, no, do it right now. And you pulled off on the side of the road and you recorded it 7 different times, again, because you're trying to do it right. Yeah. And it's just saying, just do it. And so you finally do it and you put it out there and you start to notice that other pathways start to appear. Why don't you try this? Well, that doesn't look like what I had in mind. Well, no shit. Right? Yeah. It doesn't look like what you had in mind because this is the path you need. And we resist that. And we try and take another path that we think it should go on. And it's saying, no, trust me, just do it this way. And you trust it. You write this book and you're like, I don't care if this book ever makes any money. It's not about it. I'm changing lives through this message. And you start to see that the result is what you're holding on to, not the how to. And tell me if I'm clarifying this accurately here, is that you were able to take this vision of expression. I'm going to express my journey. And it wasn't, I'm going to make this expression and I'm going to talk to this person and that person and this person, and it's going to happen this way, that way, and this way. It was, I'm going to follow what comes, that guidance that comes, we ignore it.
Yeah.
I got experience of it this week, but go ahead. What's coming up right there for you?
Yeah. Like, I'm a big believer in universal law, universal intelligence. Right. And, I never used to be, but I definitely am within the last couple of years. And for me, it's like the reason why I have never given up the dreams of being an actor is because for me, it's not a shall I or shall I not? It's just when. Like, it's not like, and it's this, to me, there's no like it's just when. Like, it's weird. It's like, there's never gonna, it's not gonna like, Perry, are you going to be successful? I'm like, well, what a silly question. Yeah, I will, but I don't know when. Right. And it's like,
wow.
And whenever, and I'm a big vision guy, like I can picture anything. Like if I close my eyes and I picture something like a scene of a movie, I can see everything. I see all the colors. I can see where people are placed, right? And I can really picture in my mind. And movie wise, I picture the movies that I'm creating. Like, I'm working on a movie now. So the book has like gave me the idea of doing a movie, The Breaking of Silence. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen Spotlight, right? Spotlight is one of my favorite films. It won Best Picture, won Golden Globe. Have you guys seen Spotlight?
No.
Have you heard of it?
No.
Gee, you know how many people haven't heard of the film? And I'm like, I don't understand. Right? It's won so many awards. I'm like, so the Spotlight is about, very briefly,
we live in a lonely cave. This is all we do.
Well, I can tell you, I'm going to watch it today. I'm going to find it.
It's one of my favorite. It's got Michael Keaton. It's got Mark Ruffalo. It's really cool people and really good actors and actresses. And it's about
team. Has Batman in it? If it has Batman in it, I'm in.
Yeah, you might make a cameo. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's a team of news journalists, news reporters in Boston in the US, right, back in 2001. And essentially, it's like they get whiff of a case of a priest molesting a child in a Catholic church system, but then they don't understand why nothing happened within the court system, because it just got put under the rug. Right, all the priests got let off, and it was a consistent thing from the 60s, 70s, 80s through to the 90s, right? And it's like the whole film is based on a true story. Like, it's called The Boston Globe. It's all true stories. Phenomenal film. And basically, when they uncover this one story of one priest molesting one child, what they soon realize is that it's priests all over the country, all over the world, molesting children in their system. And actually, very, very briefly, I remember my dad, a year before he passed, was in a car. He says to me, "Have you seen Spotlight yet?" Because he texted me saying, "Watch Spotlight." I said, "Okay, cool." And then this is actually quite profound. I talk about this in my book. He said, "Have you seen Spotlight yet?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You know, at the end of the film, just before the credits, there's a list. So it starts off in the States, a list of the Catholic churches around America where they've had reportings of sexual abuse. And then it goes to around the world, and it goes to the cities around the world where it's had reported casings of priests molesting children, right?" And then as and he goes, "Well, the town where where your step-granddad grew up, Corkin Island, is listed at the end of the movie, right?" And I was like, okay. I was like, interesting. And then he just left it there, because then I said to him, I was like, that explains it then. As in, that explains why my step-granddad might have been the way he was. And then my dad was like, "That doesn't explain anything." He gets out of the car. Now we know that was basically like an attack on him, because I'm basically telling my dad that it's okay what your stepdad done to you, because it obviously happened to him. And now jump forward very quickly before going back. So when I released my book, and I knew, right? So when my step-granddad passed away, we had no contact with his family. So we haven't spoken to his family in over 10 years, right? Now, I knew when this book would come out, I just had a feeling that a member or members of his family, wherever they are in the world, would reach out through the media to me personally, and they would be like, "Who on earth are you talking about? You talking about our dad? You talking about our uncle? You talking about my brother? Right? He isn't that man. You're lying." Like, all this, type of statements. It was about 3 or 4 weeks after I dropped my book, I had a message on Facebook, right? And literally, the first sentence was like, "Hey Perry, I don't know if you know me or remember me, but I am your step granddad's insert. She isn't. She will be soon, but she isn't comfortable with stating the, what do you call it, like how in relation she is to my step granddad. But she's like, but I am his insert blank." And then I just put my phone down. I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. What's she gonna do? She's gonna take me to court for talking about this, like, because there's no proof, like, or what? And you know what she said? She goes, "I just want to let you know that our whole family is behind you with this message. Wow. He abused all of us too."
Oh my gosh. So
my step granddad abused all the kids in his family, right? He then came over to our family, he abused my dad, he abused my auntie, he abused my cousin, and then he abused me. But not once was he done, like prison-wise. Not once was he taken to court. And I'm going to say why. Because here's the thing about intrafamilial abuse. A lot of people think intrafamilial abuse is black and white. Oh, so your dad's abusing you? Go and tell the police, right? Your dad's abusing you? Go and tell your mum, so his wife. But here's the thing about that, is then you're then put into an even more vulnerable position, because then you're like, well, if I tell my mum that my dad's abusing me, I am going to be the person who tears down the family, right? How on earth could my mum stay with my dad knowing that she is married and living with an abuser? No. So I will be the cause of them breaking up. Right, I'll be the cause of the divorce.
I also heard, Perry, and maybe you can correct me too, but like, you know, sometimes the abuser will come forward and tell the family, but then the family goes into like almost a state of denial. But I think it's partly because of the same things. They don't want to be responsible for, you know, the family. This can't happen to me, right? Those types of feelings come up, like this doesn't happen in our family, and then they go after actually the person that was abused.
Yeah. And that is very much that is very common. I remember one time, it's not exactly the same.
I think that was Maureen Pisani in our Wake Up with Giants radio show, I think. Okay. So if anybody wants to go back and maybe she can clarify too, moving forward. But sorry to cut you off. Keep going, Perry. You're doing great.
No, I remember when, so you know how I mentioned earlier how I knew about my cousin being abused, right? Now, there was a time where it got too much for my cousin. So basically, I met up with the two girls. They're both their sisters. Oh yeah, so I ended up meeting up with them. So in that message where she said how family's got your backing, yeah, I then said to her, let's meet up, right? So I then met up with two women from the family, right? And we all cried, we all hugged, and I said to them, I said, listen, right? And it was so bizarre, right? Because these are members of direct relation, right? Blood relation of a man who abused so many people, right? And some people might see these two girls as enemies because they're direct blood with him, and they remind him, like one of them is a spitting image of him, right? But I was like, listen, we're still family. And they looked at me, I was like, what do you mean we're family? I said, you guys didn't abuse me, right? I said, it was your dad. Like, I mean, it's obvious. I was like, it was your dad that abused me. It was your dad that abused you. You are the victims as well as I am the victims, right? We are still a family. And this is the thing, is like, sometimes when people have been abused, they couldn't even fathom like connecting with the abuser's family in that way, right? But for me, it's like, how on earth are we all going to heal if we can't do that, right? How are we all going to unite and be a loving driving force in this world and try help other people break their silence if we can't get together with other people who've been abused too, whether it's by the same man or not? You know,
Perry, this is so out of the box, right?
Yeah.
So out of the box, because if you were to look this up, let's say you Googled this, how do I heal from sexual trauma? You would get a list of things, and it would probably miss some of the things that you're doing. Like, you're so following the intuitions that are coming to you that you're out of the box. I mean, you were talking about the mastermind of all these people that stretch your possibilities. And here you are stretching the possibilities for those that are watching. I have people right now, I'm messaging on the side here, you need to watch this. You need to be on this. This is for you. You know, this message gives people that permission that they've been looking for, right? We think we need to ask for permission. The truth is we don't. But I look at your mastermind, how that expands the possibilities. And here in this conversation, you're expanding the possibilities for people. And you're doing it from a space that's not, I don't know, orthodox, if I could say it that way, that you wouldn't find on Google. Maybe now you will. But even then, there's going to be a possibility for people to do it a little different, to add to that, to express it and expand it even more, because the truth is the possibilities that can come from this dialogue that you're having are limitless.
And Nick, too, like the things that come up as you're talking about that aren't just from, sexual trauma. All of us, have had a past of some sort, different things, different masks that we put on to try to hide, who we are, or maybe shame, fear, guilt. We tell ourselves different stories. You lived into a different story for 4 years, completely just made up a story of who Perry was.
Man.
And so people at home watching this can maybe they haven't been through something as egregious as sexual trauma, but maybe they've been hurt. Maybe they're living into their fear, or they're letting fear control their lives. Maybe they had some PTSD, some anxiety, some the abandonment issues. I've gone through that. I was adopted and went through some abandonment issues, and still face some of those things, the fears. And so the things that you're talking about and sharing with our giants out there, and for all those people that are listening and going to listen, this is absolutely incredible to hear, and this message needs to continue to get out.
Like you just did, right? Like I do that. I have these masks that I put on because I don't want people to know. And then when I share it and they accept it, I'm blown away. Like I've been hiding this for years, and here I share it, and you're like, "That's cool, that's okay." And I'm like, "What's wrong with you?
Damn it! I should have got this out years ago."
There's something wrong with me. So you got to think the same thing. But then people are so accepting. Like you're seeing, you had all these thoughts about what family might do. And then all of a sudden they're coming in and they're saying, "Perry, look, we're with you." And wow, how freeing is that to just get it? Look at how much we hold back, and there's people waiting for us to express that.
Yeah, I mean, like if I sat on the thoughts that his family would penalize me in some way about getting his book out, if I really sat on it for a lot longer, it may have stopped me from getting the book out. And that is basically just dwindling on the unknown. That's what it is. It's just feeding more time. Like the unknown is like one of the greatest enemies, and what does it feed on? Time. The more time you're feeding into this unknown.
But it's not. That's the paradox here. Is the unknown is exactly where we need to be.
Well, yeah, exactly. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. But I hear you. Yeah.
So
it's maybe the fear. It's maybe the fear of the unknown too, is people don't, it stops them from taking action. Is that fear of the unknown?
It can stop you or serve you, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. Like with like the breaking the silence and this path that I'm on now, and so there's a lot of unknown here. There's a hell of a lot of unknown, but what I do know is the end vision. I know exactly what it looks like. I see me on stage with loads of people in the audience who haven't broken their silence yet, but they've all come here to break their silence. I see this movie, Breaking the Silence, going out, and I see it winning Best Picture. I see it winning Oscars. Like, I'm unavailable for any other option, right? It is happening. And
I gotta point this out. Like, are you hearing this? Like, not just you. I'm talking to the viewer. Like, I am hearing this. You are creating the vision so clearly. Like, this is what I did with the Pixar movie for the Giants and the Smalls. 100 million people. It's so clear. I can see myself on the red carpet. You're describing it in such a way. You're not talking about it of how it's going to come about. You're holding the vision of what it is when it's complete. Like, I hope people are hearing this.
It'll fall into place, the how.
Yeah. Wow. Man.
Yeah. It always does, doesn't it? As long as you don't let go of that vision, and it's the faith in that vision, you will get there. It's like, if we go to the acting world, they say you will make it as an actor, like, as long as you don't give up, right? That's the only way you won't make it. If you give up, or you die. But if you don't, how can you say you haven't made it? Because you're still pursuing it. So, like, in regards to this, I will get there. The only way that I won't get there is if I give up, or I sell myself a story that isn't the vision that I should have, when really that's just some type of fear that's swaying me because of this unknown that I'm currently in, right? Yeah. So it's just gonna happen from however it's meant to.
It's just gonna happen. Exactly. I love that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Perry, highlighting the journey a bit, I can't, some of these episodes, they go by so fast and I just don't want them to end. I want to keep going. It's amazing that you were living in this space. I'm going to highlight the giant's journey, right? In this, you were living in this space where there was an unconsciousness. You didn't know what you didn't know. You were living a life that was handed to you and you were in it and you didn't know any difference, right? And then there was this awakening, and that awakening was really like when you're brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
And you have this awakening and then all of a sudden, boom, you're out there like, what's possible? What can I do? Who can I share this with? And then you start to grow through these things and you have this vision. You start to create this vision so clearly that you hold that vision in your mind so clearly that it already is how you speak of it. Mm-hmm. I just don't know when yet. I just know it is. I just don't know when. So you let go of the how to and you just focus on holding on to that vision, which is the giant's path. Yeah. You step out into the uncertainty every day. Yeah. And you embrace it. And like you said, it can either stop you or it can serve you. And that is beautiful.
Another thing too I want to highlight is that you could have gone any direction with what happened to you.
Yeah.
You could have totally flipped it around and lived into that story for forever until you die and been just like your dad.
Yeah. Or I could have been like my granddad and abused people. And here's the thing. And I say this, right? And people are like, no, you wouldn't have. I guarantee you, if I asked my step-granddad when he came, because we know what I found out from his two daughters, right? Was that my step-granddad, him, his brother, and his two sisters, there's actually 5 of them, but when their mum died, the 5th sibling was too old, but she didn't need to go to school. So the 2 boys went to an orphanage, right, in Ireland, run by priests. The 2 girls went to an orphanage run by nuns. Now, the nuns would beat physically the students there. So one of the sisters is deaf in one ear because of how she used to get beat by the nuns. Now, the 2 boys, so my step-granddad and his brother, now the brother died a couple of years ago. He also abused people and he was a drunk, right? And so both of them, they would get chained to the stairs by the priests and they would be raped and they would be beaten, right? And they would be shamed. And that was the discipline system within the school. And this is the thing. If I asked my step-granddad when he came out of that school, mate, do you think you're going to abuse kids when you're older? What do you think the answer would have been? And it would have been no. And this is the thing. We don't plan for this to happen. So I could have been like my dad, could have died at the age of 48, leaving behind a family from alcohol abuse. Or I could have been going around molesting kids because so many years have piled on where the wounds have just grown, just taken over my entire body like a virus. Well, I can't stop thinking about kids, right? Because I haven't been able to get out of my own mind of what happened to me as a kid, right? Do you know what I mean? So it could have been all of that. And very quick, I know we're short on time, but like in regards to what you were saying earlier, with the book is interesting because I wrote this book in the first lockdown here in the UK last year, right? I wrote the book then, but I didn't release it for a year. Now, why? Because, right, when I wrote this book, I had a vision for, and this is also another thing, right? I had a vision of what I wanted. I wanted the book to, I wanted to hire on an editor to do the copy of it, the design. I wanted somebody to do the words, and I wanted it to be done proper. I want to have a book coach. I wanted to have a publishing company, so it's in the bookstores. Half of that is ego, right? I want it in the bookstores. I want to see it. I want people to see my book. But I didn't have the money to hire all those people. It would have cost about $5,000. I didn't have $5,000, right? So I didn't release the book. Now I've sat on it for about a year, right? Because I was a perfectionist, which is basically just a balled up bunch of insecurities, right? And then it was like the 19th of February, right? It was 2 days before. So I released this book on the 19th of February. The 17th, so 2 days before that, I was on my bed and I made a decision. I was like, why have you not got the book out? I put myself into a mental interrogation room. Why have you not put your book out? Because it's not perfect. I don't have a publishing. So what? Self-publish it. But it might not get anywhere. I don't have that much of an audience. Doesn't matter, right? Go onto Canva, do the book design yourself, right? Put the text through Grammarly, the Google Chrome extension, right? And just do the book, make it imperfect, get the book out. So I was like, oh, whatever, man. So I just put it on Amazon, and then boom, within and that's what happened. From It's just crazy, isn't it? How that just happened.
Sounds like satisficing to me.
Yeah, it does. You want to explain that term, Ryan?
It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to satisfy. Yeah, it just has to. That isn't even a word. It's a made-up term that Nick made up. Satisficing.
It's Herbert Simon. He's a Nobel Prize winner.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I
stole it for you, Nick. Nick, I stole it for you.
Yeah.
That's it. Leave that in perfect action. If you've got a strong message, it doesn't need to be perfect. Get it out, because the message will carry its way. And if you need it to go through a publishing company, or it needs to be perfected, that can come at a later stage. You can do version 2.0 on Amazon. Just get that first edition out, get that story out. And that's what's happened.
I mean, everything we've created is based off of that, not perfection. We just follow the intuitions as they come. We don't know what it's going to look like next year. We have a vision of where we're going, but how it's going to get there, we don't know. So we just follow what comes. And your journey, it's more than like Ryan said, like you could have stayed down one of those paths, which would have been it would have continued this cycle. It wouldn't have shifted it. And here you put an end to that cycle. It ended with you. And it's one of those things that the awareness around it, the willingness to follow those intuitions, because it would seem weird to do what you've done, right? In your world, you would have looked at it and thought, that feels weird. That's not normal for me to do that. And here you follow it anyway. You pull your car over and you start doing the video right there on the side of the road. And it felt weird, but you did it anyway, right? And what we do is we think, oh, I can't do that because it's weird. I can't do that because people might judge me, or, but it's us judging ourselves about what we think other people might judge us as. Exactly. And so we're the ones playing the movie in our head, trying to get them. They don't even have anything to do with the movie. And we're sitting here acting on that like it's their fault, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that you acted on the weird in this. That you went out of the norm and you broke a cycle.
Yeah, I would say that I think I'm also fortunate enough to say that I was a couple of years into personal development. Like, I knew that we are not our thoughts, right? And we can observe our thoughts and we can let them go when we want to. So I knew in that car, like I said to myself, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my thoughts. I'm like, shut up. I'm not my thoughts. Stop talking. Right? Whoever those voices are in my head, that X, Y, and Z is going to go wrong. It doesn't matter because there's nobody else in this car. It's just me. So who's saying that? Right? There's no one else here. And the universe is not what I've been picturing all these years living in silence. I know it's something else. And it's just having this belief that there is something else there. You don't need to know what sometimes. This is the thing. You just need to know. You don't need to know what. Sometimes you don't need to know what that vision looks like, but you just need to know that there is a vision. There is another thing that's there, and you just need to be at a point where you're just like, I am tired and I'm fed up of being in this vision that I am in this world, and I need to get over there to that place. I don't know how, but the best thing to do is just put one step forward right now, and that's the vision. I've
been sharing this frequently over the last week, but I think it belongs here, is that what you're describing, consciousness, the universe, God, source, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. It's there, it's present. And here we go along the path and we say, I'm going to take the wheel almost like a kid, like I'm going to walk and I want to do it on my own. And so whatever it is says, okay, go ahead, but I can't guarantee the results, right? Like, go ahead and do it your way. That's okay. It might be uncomfortable. I'm going to let you do it. And then what happens is we do it and we get frustrated and we're like, it's all your fault, right? Like I'm not supported in doing it the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
And then when you step back and you really look at it, Perry, like what you've done, and you step away from that wanting to control how it comes about, it's amazing, almost miraculous how it comes about. It's like you can't make this shit up.
No, you can't. And you can't make it up. And it's just, I gave up questioning, like, how on earth did this happen? How on earth did the book make it? How on earth am I working on this movie? How on earth did somebody be so generous to give me their platform to share my message or connect me with this person? It's happening because it is what it is. It's happening because it needs to happen. Man. And it's just letting go of control, right? To the what ifs, letting go of the control to the need of control, and it's just letting life take its course. And you're just on that river, right? You're on the boat, and you're just letting the stream take you, and you're just believing that it's taking you to where you need to go. But it takes a lot to have that belief, but you'll get there if you allow it to.
That's surrender. That's letting go. That's trusting the intuitions and acting on them, and not questioning them and not judging them. Like, that's too weird for me. I can't do that. What would people think? What would they say? Like, your journey is more than just healing from trauma. It's showing people how to create vision and to create in this world. It's a twofold. It feels twofold, and it's probably more fold than that. It's multidimensional. Yeah. And I suspect that there's going to be a lot more that you don't even know about yet.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that I'm looking forward to. The ones I have no idea about.
Yeah.
Because like we can set goals, but oftentimes, the biggest transformations come in the areas that we had no idea either existed, or we had no idea would even go in that area. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're a giant in some areas, but there's some areas you don't even know you're not a giant yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you'll feel small in those areas. And that's the beauty of this journey with the giants and the smalls, is that you'll become a giant in one area and go immediately back into a new area that's uncertain. And you'll feel small again. And you'll go back through that journey all over again. Then you'll do it. There's no limit to that.
No, there's always areas in life that we're going to be, small in, and we need to be a giant in, right? And I think that's the beauty of it. I think the moment that we think we're a giant in everything is
how sad, right?
Yeah, yeah, sad. Yeah, exactly.
Huh. Yeah. Well, this is a message of hope. It could have easily gone down the road of, I feel so sorry for Perry. I feel so bad for Perry. Like he is powerless. Your last name, Power, Perry Power. I could have made you powerless by holding you in the space of poor Perry. It's justified that he would give up on life because of what happened. And here I look at this story and I'm like, wow, Perry, he's powerful. Look at what he created because of what happened in his life. Like, had that not happened, could Perry be who he is today? As a possibility.
Exactly. I said we have a publication over here called The Sun, and I was very fortunate to be enough to be on them. It's like one of the biggest ones here in the UK, and they saw my book and they wanted me to be on there. And I said to them, and they were like, "Are you sure you want to put that in?" I'm like, "Yes." And it's I say quite frequently that being sexually abused and the passing of my dad is some of the best things that ever happened to me.
Wow.
Like, being sexually abused is one of the best things that ever happened to me, right? Wow. And some people might be like, why on earth would you be like, why would you say that? There's better things that could have happened to you. Yes, but for a second, just try to see it from the angle that I'm trying to come at it from, right? Is that if I wasn't abused, I wouldn't have this message. I wouldn't have the charity. None of it would exist. Sure, I might have had a different message, but I have no idea what that message would have been. It wouldn't be as powerful as this one. So yeah. I'm glad that it happened to me, and I'm glad how everything happened. Like, I say, I was on a podcast yesterday. She goes, "Did you have a good childhood?" And I was like, "Yeah, I had a great childhood." She's like, "What?" I was like, "I had a great childhood." I was like, "Sure, some bad things happened within a childhood, but I'm not going to let that blanket my whole childhood and say that I had a bad childhood. I had great parents. I had a great family, very loving home. Sure, some shit happened, but it's how you look at it, it's how you're using it. And that's how I try to be, and that's how I like to help other people see it too."
Yeah, this is incredible. Yeah, Ryan, do you have any additional thoughts?
I think for those that are watching and those that are going to watch, like I say, I think some of that turning point happened for Perry when he shared.
Yeah.
And you might not have the courage to go into your family or go into somebody, but we have a tribe of giants. We have a group of people, and you don't have to know us. That's the best part about it, is we don't know all of our giants. We haven't met them. Most of them we haven't even met.
We haven't even met some of our business partners.
Yeah, we have business partners that we haven't even which we're going to change that. But if you're watching at home and you want somewhere to go just so that you can maybe build up that courage, just like Perry, come over to a tribe of giants. Give us a shout out.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, we'll be there. Like, we'll listen, and we'll there's no judgment. There's love, and a place where you could find that courage to step out and to find and to see the giant potential that's in you that we see.
Yeah, Perry, go ahead.
I think I wasn't going to bring it up, so I didn't know how much time we had. But now you brought it up, I feel like I have to, because it's very important. Is that
Please.
the end of my book? There's a chapter called "Ways to Break Your Silence." Now, I make it very, 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 very clear is that sometimes, actually quite a lot, you'd be surprised, quite a lot of times, people who live in silence, they hear my story, right? And like, okay, Perry spoke out verbally. He told somebody verbally. That's how he broke his silence. So I'm guessing I need to do the same. But that verbal communication for a lot of people keeps them in silence because they don't feel ready to verbally say something, right? They don't feel ready to climb Mount Everest on the very first attempt, and they've never hiked before in their entire life, right? So for me, I say that what you need to do is make telling somebody step 10 or step 100, right? You need to break the silence to yourself, right? In as many ways as you wish. You can journal it. You can tell yourself in the mirror, because there's a lot of power in words, but nobody else needs to be in the room. Nobody else needs to be in the building, okay? You can draw, you can paint, because here's the thing. I give this example a lot, and then I'll close it off, is that we see, paintings, right? You've got a canvas and it's a painting, and it just looks like the artist has got a pot of paint, a brush, and splashing it. Just looks like splashes of paint, right? Yeah. And it's like $500,000 price tag, and you're like, what? And somebody's like, give me a tub of paint and a paintbrush, and I can do the same thing, right? But how do you not know that that artist was sexually abused as a child, lived in silence for 20 years, and the way that they broke their silence was through that very art that you're looking at right now? So if you ever see a piece of art and you can't understand what you're looking at, it could very well be somebody breaking their silence, because the way that they are expressing their feelings that they've had locked away in a cage for so many years is through an art form that they feel best to communicate it through. And they're going to get comfortable in sharing that message to themselves through the emotions, to the universe, until they get to a place where they're not judging themselves anymore, right? And then they can tell the person next to them. Then they can share it in the Facebook group. And then they can tell a group of people at a meeting. But share it with yourself, because it's you. When I broke my silence, when I did the video, I didn't do it for other people. I didn't do it for other people. I did it for me because I needed to do it. And then it got to a point where it then became for other people because I chose to. And again, here's the thing. When you break your silence, it doesn't then have to become for other people. You don't have to hold that torch if you don't want to, right? You can just do it for yourself. So I want to make that very clear, that first break the silence to yourself and then move on to breaking it to other people.
I think that's beautiful. When I wrote the book, The Giants and the Smalls, it wasn't for anybody but me and my kids. I wrote it for my kids too, but it wasn't for the world. Not yet. Right now it is. But the beauty is that we get to express it in our way. There's so many ways to be a giant. It's not about monetary things. It's not about things that you can collect in this world. It can be different. It could be an experience, a way of helping others experience. Like, so many ways to be a giant, so many ways within yourself to be a giant. And I hope that people are inspired. I mean, really go back through. If you're watching this, go back through and look for the points that Perry shared in here, because he's teaching you the process of creation, things that my mentors have taught me. If you go back through time, these go all the way back through history. And they're saying, look, this is how it is. And we ignore it. That's weird. Right? Well, it's the weird that you need to follow.
Yeah.
It's the out of the norm.
Yeah. So, if you see it in the movies, when you see like some of the biggest actors or some of the biggest singers, some of the biggest painters, artists, they were weird once upon a time. Right? They were the weird one at school, but they're the ones who become the most successful, the most famous, or the most influential. So being weird is good. Don't embrace it. It's what you attach to that word. Like, if you think being weird is bad, change the attachment that you have to it. It's great.
That's what Dorothy said. Sounds like it's time to get weird.
And with that, let's go get weird, giants. Make it a giant day. Thanks for being a part of this.
Thank you.
And we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Perry.
Cheers.